Welcome back to the Love Your 9 to 5 show, episode number 15. I sincerely believe that every single one of us have something that's unique, and we have a skill or what we call a superpower. It's almost as if we could press a button, we would love to be always in vacation weekend mode.
Caution, you will begin to love your 9 to 5 with this show. Join us as we explore and discover your unique strengths and learn to apply them to your daily business activities with your host, Shmuel Septimus.
Hey, Shmuel, you with me?
I am here. How you doing, Jason?
I'm great, man. How are you?
Doing great.
Great. So for the audience that's listening, this is a little bit of an experiment for both of us. If you're listening to us, this is a shared podcast episode for me with the Small Moves podcast, as well as with Shmuel's podcast. We are both releasing this episode on each of our particular venues, and we're just going to have a conversation about each other, and we're going to be interviewing each other at the same time. Like I mentioned, this is sort of an experimental thing for the two of us. I really wanted to interview Shmuel for my show, and when I was approaching him about that, some things came up in conversation about my past that he thought might be an interesting fit for his show. So rather than us doing two separate interviews, we're deciding, since we're both relatively new at this game of podcasting, we decided we would just do one recording and both release it on our two shows, and we'll just see what happens. So I'm sure I speak for Shmuel when I say, if you could please give us some feedback at our individual community pages or websites, just let us know what you think about this format. That would be great. Shmuel, do you have any other things to say about that?
No, I love the way that you're upfront with the listeners, that this is definitely experimental. I'm really excited to do this with you. Like you said, I thought that, we have a lot in common between both of our shows. And I think that through this conversation, we're definitely going to have a good time. I know that from the pre-show conversation. And
Sure.
I'm really hoping that the listeners on both of our shows will be able to get as much benefit as they can from actionable information that we'll share. And at the very least, hopefully it'll be an entertaining conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. He was like, if nothing else, at least entertaining.
That's it.
So, Shmuel, for the listeners of the Small Moves podcast, can you give us a little bit of your background? Tell us about your show and tell us about your professional and personal background, I guess, and just sort of let the audience get to know you a little bit.
Sure. I will say this is my first time answering that question on a podcast, so let me see how that fails. So my name is Shmuel Septimus. I live in Boston, Massachusetts. I am currently the host of the Love Your 9 to 5 podcast, which is a podcast devoted to helping others really begin working and appreciating the work that they do every single day. One of us have something that's unique, and we have a skill or what we call a superpower, which something that we can excel at and apply to our professional environments so that we will absolutely love what we do every single day. As far as my background is a little bit unique. Jason, I don't even know how much of this I shared with you beforehand, but I have not had what you would call a traditional job until I was 30. I've been, I'm a Jewish Orthodox person, and I've been studying Talmud, which is the Jewish law in the original Hebrew and Aramaic language, for 15 years or so, probably 10 hours a day, and, really been involved in that, completely not involved in the professional world until I really just came into the healthcare administration field. When I was 30, that's when I really got my first traditional job. So that gave me probably a unique way of seeing the way we all go about our jobs. For me personally, it was so exciting to finally have the opportunity to express certain talents that I didn't have the right format or forum to express them in my previous life. And I genuinely was loving my 9 to 5. I really was. And when I came into work and I hear some of my fellow employees saying that, it's Monday and everyone has the long faces. And then I was introduced to Thirsty Thursdays. which in concept I like that, but I just don't like that it has to be that way.
Sure.
Oh my gosh, the weekend is coming, and then all we hear about is the weekends, and on Mondays you hear how the weekend was, and then the vacations. It's almost as if we could press a button, we would love to be always in vacation weekend mode, and this work is some sort of curse that we inherited, that it's an obligation that we must do to pay our bills in order just to get to this place of enjoyment, which is not work. And that is something that, to me, I view that as tragic. I think that it's nothing short of tragic, and I think that I know now, for having done this for a few years, that it's definitely possible to enjoy what you do. And not only that, the only real enjoyment that's possible is through being productive and expressing the talents that we have. And I've been working with assisted livings in the past little while. In my role as a nursing home administrator, I have to network with other healthcare organizations. And I've asked them, what is the average length of stay? How long does somebody who comes into an assisted living actually stay there before their health deteriorates and they have to move to a higher acuity healthcare setting like a nursing home or a hospital? Mm-hmm. And from all the marketing, and cut in if I'm talking too much, but
no, sure.
Okay, from all the marketing that
my audience doesn't know you. I'm perfectly fine with you going. Go right ahead.
All right. So from the marketing material that I've consumed, from radio ads and other print ads about assisted livings before having ever walked into one, was that you retire at 65, you move into either independent living or assisted living, and that's when the fun begins. And you play bingo all day, and you drink, and you eat, and you watch movies, you go on trips, and it's just like it's paradise while you're still here. And
sure.
That's kind of what I thought. But then when I was working with the marketing person at a local assisted living, she was explaining to me that no, the average length of stay is 21 to 29 months. And after that, so that's, roughly 2 years. And after that, usually most people's health, doesn't stay the same as it was when they came in, and they move on. And I see, even in the nursing home world, I see people come in, they retire, and sometimes they were fully active just a few months earlier, and they're barely holding on, a few months later, having suffered some sort of health setback in the hospital. And sometimes they do the runaround, they go to the hospital, to the nursing home, to the hospital, to home, and then it goes down again, their health, and it's a downhill battle from there. So two things, I guess. Number one is, waiting till 65 to be in life is way, way too late. I know we're living longer than we used to, and people are living well into their 80s and 90s, and some of them well past that, and that's wonderful. But I have no patience to wait until I'm 65.
Yeah, I'm with you. I was going to say, is like that's a very nice excuse to use when it comes to trying to delay gratification. Is like, oh, well, it's okay. They're saying people are living really into their 80s and 90s now, so it's okay for me to, dredge through the seventh level of hell for the next 35 years because it's okay. I still have time, right?
Right. And look at those 65-year-olds, right? What do they look like health-wise? And are they still able to physically engage in the same enjoyments that that life has to offer at that age? I mean, the answer is no. For the most part, it's different. But if you do look around at the Warren Buffetts of the world, and now I'm not a fan of workaholics, but
sure.
But people who are working at something they genuinely enjoy, it doesn't matter if they're in their 70s, 80s, or 90s, they don't want to retire. They
don't want to stop. Yeah.
No, of course they don't want to stop, because there's nothing more enjoyable. They're genuinely enjoying that. Most of the time, there is something called workaholics, which is not because necessarily they're enjoying it, but there are plenty of people who are successful, and that's their retirement, is just to keep on doing what they're doing, keep on growing and developing their skills and growing their businesses, giving back to their community. And it's not, the weekends are necessary, vacations are necessary, because we need to recharge, otherwise we run out of steam. But that's not the goal. The goal is to be able to spend our days doing productive things like we're doing right now, right? It's a Sunday morning, and this is our downtime. This is our weekend right now, and we're both being productive. We're putting together our knowledge in a way to share it with a greater audience, really just, to make a difference. And this, sure. In my book, doing what we're doing right now as often and and to the highest level that we can and providing value to others, that's enjoyment. That's loving your 9 to 5. And my staff now is starting to learn that themselves too. Unfortunately, for them, they hear too much about my podcast, and and my ideas are tested out on them, but they're starting to like it. They're like, you know what, I should really enjoy this. Let me see what I could tweak to enjoy this. So
it's like, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I guess just that's the long-ended answer to just about who I am and where I'm up to right now.
Sure. I mean, yeah. And I was going to say but it's something that you're enjoying. And it's so funny. Like you might say that the people that are working with you are hearing too much about your podcast. And that is absolutely the case in my world. Like whether it be my in-laws or my best friends or, my wife or whatever, like when you get those random calls from somebody, when I get those random phone calls from some of my best friends, where we just kind of call each other just to shoot the breeze and catch up. It's like the first thing I'm talking about is like, hey man, it's like the podcast is going great. I'm having a lot of fun. Like they don't care the bit about they might not care a bit about my podcast, but I'm like, it's what I like to talk about. And like, to me, it's no different. It's no difference than a rock climbing junkie that talks about, what they like the type of terrain that they hit this past weekend, or the gym rat that's over there that likes to talk about the milestones that they're hitting, or whatever it is that you're into, or like if you're really big into building model ships, whatever it is, like it's the thing that you like to talk about. And those things keep your brain engaged. They keep your body engaged. It was like, clearly I'm not going to be comparing myself to somebody that's out there like running the Moab 240 or something like that. But when I'm recording my podcasts, like I'm standing up, I'm moving around, I'm expending energy doing this. Like this is fun to me. Like doing this work is fun to me. I'm having incredible conversations with incredible people. I'm learning a ton, not just from my guests, but from the process of being a podcast producer. Like I know so much more about audio editing software, like the difference between the hardware that you use versus the software that's used to make sound amazing. Like I didn't know any of this stuff before. I'm just a guy standing here talking into a microphone. Like I don't know this stuff, or I didn't know this stuff until I started doing this. And it's fun. It's a hobby. Oh, by the way, this hobby could potentially become a business. Yes, that is absolutely the case. And that is something that I am driving towards myself just because of my entrepreneurial nature. That's the direction in which I'm going. Hopefully, audience is like audience permitting, of course. But my background for your audience that might not be familiar with me, I've been on the entrepreneurial side of the world the lion's share of my life. I've had, I started work when I was 15. I started working when I was 15. I got out of school, with my last regular job, I'd say at 21, going on 22 when I got my first full commission sales job, working in the mortgage business for a big monstrosity of a national bank whose name Bank of America I won't mention here on this show.
Of course not.
No. And so I got my first job there. I hopped around to a couple of different companies there looking for different opportunities in the commission side, in the sales side, in the management side. I was looking at a lot of different things. And then I came to the realization that I was spending an enormous amount of my time while doing commission sales in the financial services industry, doing nonprofit related work on the side with a skew in the direction of fundraising. Like it wasn't necessarily all that I was doing, but it happened to be what I gravitated to, either membership related organizations. I was the head of the membership division of a couple of different large scale nonprofits in the Baltimore area. So at least in from a volunteer aspect. Like those are the things that I was focused on. So it's something that I have a knack for. So I decided to get out of the mortgage industry in 2008, just in time. Haha.
Right.
And then I decided to start my own company to do contract, nonprofit, and political fundraising. It was my skill set. It was something that I enjoyed doing more than anything, while I had a job doing other things and doing those things as a volunteer. I loved it. There was nothing that I enjoyed more. Mm-hmm. And then that was 2008 into 2009 through into 2010. And then I came to the realization that when I have to do the thing that I love for money, I kind of hated it.
Why is that?
Well, because for me, and maybe it was just a bad. In retrospect, I can argue with myself that it was due to a bad decision on my part that I shifted from doing nonprofit fundraising to political fundraising. I got into the political machine, as they say.
Okay.
Where you're forced to pick teams, you're forced to take sides, you're forced to start treating others with disdain in order to push your side. And that just really soured me to the process. So
just so I understand, let me just cut in for a second. The fundraising skill sounds like it's probably the same skill. It's just you don't have the same type of motive to work for a nonprofit as it is for a political organization, or it's maybe not as clean.
It's not. It's absolutely not as clean. But well, you can argue that it's not. I can make the argument based on experiences that I've had that it is actually not that much different. At the grander scheme, like say for example, let me take you for a second. Like take you out of your current job, and let's say you go out and you see a massive hole in the elder care industry. Not that there's any holes in that industry whatsoever where service suffers. Mm-hmm. That never happens anywhere, of course, but let's just pretend that it did.
Right.
Yeah, let's just pretend that it did. You see people fall through the cracks, and you decide that you want to do something about it. You're being an entrepreneur. You're starting a nonprofit, and this is your passion. This is your love. Now, when you compare that person to somebody that works for a nonprofit that raises a couple $100 million a year, which was what some of my nonprofit related experience was.
Wow.
Like think the big national health care related nonprofits that are out there.
Okay.
This one I won't mention their name. Okay. But well, think of it out there. There's the Cancer Society, there's the Heart Association, there's all of the biggies.
Yeah.
It was one of those biggies.
Okay. And your role was to bring in a couple $100 million a year? No,
that wasn't my role. I was talking, that was the organization.
Oh, okay.
But what I would say is that their almost disdain for the people like you, in that like you're the small one person that's passionate about this thing. You were really a waste of time for them. If I was trying to raise money, and let's say for example, I'm going to make this up, but let's assume that it was the American Heart Association.
Okay.
And you lost both parents to heart attacks, one to stroke, one to a heart attack. Mm-hmm. The mission of the American Heart Association would be something, pardon the pun, very dear to your heart. You would want to help. You would want to volunteer. You would want to try to raise money, and you would want to give, $50 a month, $100 a month, or whatever it is to that organization. Well, if I was having a conversation to you about a way for you to help out with this organization at those numbers, I would be, in no uncertain terms, heavily dissuaded to bothering myself with someone like you. I need to be talking to your employer to get them to pay $50,000 to buy a table at our annual gala. But you yourself, you're a waste of my time. And I find that to be tragic. And that's something that I saw quite a bit in the nonprofit sector once you started to get into those realms. And I just felt that to be incredibly unfortunate. Very similar to the political sector. The individual donors, yeah, everybody likes to brag. Oh, we raised $10 here, $5 here, whatever people can spare. but really they want the guy that can write a $250,000 check, and everybody else is just kind of a waste of time.
So basically, it was more about the numbers than anything else. Even though the smaller numbers really they align much more with the official mission statement of both organizations. But if they're not going to affect the bottom line, so you're spending a half hour on the phone with me and you get $50 a month, that's not what they hired you to do. Is that basically?
Yep. You're going to get, it's like you being me being me, I would get slapped on the wrist for wasting a half hour of my time getting $100 donation. I should have been in a boardroom meeting with somebody. And my experience working for that organization, lasted 7 months. After 7 months, I was like, I can't do, I'm being completely disingenuous. I can't do this. Because once you get to that board level, you're not talking to people that care that much about the mission.
Right.
They're looking for write-offs. They're looking for sponsorship opportunities that gets them as the platinum sponsor of the annual blah blah blah.
Yeah, it's all business.
Exactly. And that was just incredibly unfortunate, and it soured me to the process. So assuring myself that I would never let that happen again. But it was a skill set that I had. I didn't know what to do with it at the time. So I decided to go out and start another small business, which ended up being a small delivery business. And I fell into it where I just happened to fall into a great contract within a month of starting. And that contract has been with me to this day. And it's a phenomenal, municipal based contract that has been a wonderful base for this business going back 7 years now. And it's great. It's just not the most mentally stimulating business in the world. So I'm constantly looking at doing different things. I also actively listen to 26 different podcasts because I'm out driving around all day. I'm an evangelist when it comes to podcasting.
Wow.
And that's what kind of brought me to the Small Moves podcast and where I am now. My wife and I, we're in the process of thinning out all of our stuff, and we're planning on moving into a tiny house or an RV or something along those lines, with our 2 kids. Haha, people think we're insane.
You clearly read the 4 hour
so
work week.
We're looking to do that.
Is that correct?
Say that again?
I said you've clearly read the 4 hour work week by Tim Ferriss.
I am a apostle of Tim Ferriss. It's like my audience knows that about me. I'm a huge fan of the guy. Reading that book literally changed my life. I know a lot of people use that terminology when they read any book that has a little nugget in it that was helpful to me. I am a true follower of his stuff. That book absolutely changed my perspective on everything.
Wow. So you're taking that very literally.
Literally.
Wow. What I'm trying to do with that book is to try to see how that plays into everything else, that I have going on. I don't plan on, being as extreme and moving into an RV and moving around, especially with 5 kids.
Sure.
That could be a challenge. It's private schools, just because I have to send them to Jewish schools. And although it's not completely off the map, but
sure.
But the concept of the goal
off the rocker maybe, but not off the map. Anyway, go ahead.
But but the basic goal, it opens up your mind. It really does. If you really absorb that book, it does change everything because it challenges the status quo of trading dollars for time. I think that's
Absolutely.
the biggest piece. And there's no correlation necessarily as far as the level of success that a person can reach as being in a traditional, workforce and being on a payroll as opposed to setting up a business. And even more than that, I've been in businesses and, companies where there's a corporate culture that, sending out emails at 2:00 in the morning about something that's completely unimportant is something that's praiseworthy and that's wonderful. You're rolling over middle of the night to answer that email and, you have a new idea or just forward some more minutia to someone else who will forward it to someone else. so that
It's
nothing
like,
gets
boy,
done.
and all you hear is, boy, that guy's a go-getter.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's like, I view that now, which is what I used to think. I used to think it's like, wow, like these new productivity tools that are coming out. I mean, keep in mind, this was when I was getting out of the mortgage industry. Like, this is 2007, 2008. It was like the iPhone just joined the world. It's like, oh my God, these new tools are going to allow me to actually not have to wait till the next day to respond to my clients. This is going to be amazing.
Right.
Crap. Fast forward 10 years. We're like, oh my God, how do I burn this thing?
Exactly.
It's like
Exactly.
now when I see an email come in, when I wake up in the morning and see an email that came in at 2:30 in the morning from somebody that I know that I'm related to professionally, I'm like, man, his marriage must be in trouble.
Exactly.
It's like it's completely changed my perspective. I don't view that as being productive. I view that with pity, like, at least, but that's just how I feel now. I didn't think this before. This was a waking up moment for me.
Yeah, I used to be one of those people, and I would turn over and
Yeah.
respond to those emails, and people said about me, "Oh my gosh, he is a go-getter." But just by zooming out of the situation a little bit, and I've had the opportunity to work for a few companies over the last few years, and just being able to compare things, and I see that the effectiveness of that crazy workaholic mentality, where someone who, the later you're up and the more emails you send and the longer the email chain, the more important and busy you are, it doesn't produce results. And as a matter of fact, I'll just I just recently moved a few months ago to a new company where there is zero corporate culture, and it's like the volume was just automatically went from 10 to 0. Like,
God bless it.
There's no conference calls. There's no in-person meetings. My boss is, via text and WhatsApp, not even on the phone. And I have, he trusts me to completely run the company, and I don't have to send reports every 4 minutes or look at reports, or just, I noticed that I actually had time to do my job. As stupid as that sounds, I literally did not have time to do my job from when I woke up, from when I came to work. Sometimes from when I woke up, actually, until the day was done. I was like, most of the time was, responding to reports, sending out a report, getting on a conference call, driving to a meeting, coming back from the meeting, preparing a PowerPoint for the next presentation. It was just so much minute. Oh, and in between is just responding to emails about nothing. Just pushing things along and just just stirring the pot. And as far as actual results, we never had time to think on a higher level as, okay, what are the two most important things that this organization needs to move forward?
Yeah.
In my particular, go ahead.
I was going to say, like, and it's so funny that even while remaining in the corporate culture, and one of the things, and I know this is turning out to be almost a commercial for Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek, and I do apologize for that, everyone, but there are so many great points to consider when having the conversation that we're having right now, which is someone that works in the corporate culture, on the other side of the table of somebody that would probably take a nosedive off a roof if I had to take a corporate culture job again. Like that. So completely different mentalities in that way, but there's so many things that can apply to both scenarios. Like one point that was made in the book, if you're working in the corporate culture and you get caught up in one of these bottleneck jobs, like what Shmuel has, where you're looked upon as the authority figure, you're the one that needs to make a decision because no one else wants to take responsibility or make a decision. One of the suggestions that Tim Ferriss mentions in that book that I always loved was to not purposefully disregard your email inbox for between 24 to 48 hours. Not respond to anything that came in within that window. And basically what he would say is that by the time he would get to an email where someone was sending him a panicked email saying, oh my God, this happened. What do I do? How should I handle this? What am I going to do? If you just ignored it for a little while, guess what happened? They figured it out on their own. And then by the time he got around to sending an email about it, a day to 2 days later, the quick and simple response he'd get would be, it's like, oh, we got it squared away. Thanks. Moving on.
Right. Or right. You
Oh
follow
my
up.
God. It's like God forbid, shut up for a second. And it's amazing how problems have a tendency to just kind of solve themselves. It's like, don't offer yourself up as the sacrificial lamb, and problems begin to solve themselves,
Exactly.
as us higher primates have learned to kind of figure out after a while.
Right. Right.
It's like when the alpha's off into the jungle. It was like when the alpha's off in the jungle, the betas kind of had to step up and do stuff. Otherwise, everybody was going to die. It's like that's kind of how we're wired.
Right. I know I was talking to Kevin Cruz, which I mentioned to you before the show, from he's the author of the 15 secrets successful people know about time management. So one of the things that he has there in his book is he says that he hung up a sign on his door with the big number 1440 on it, and people would come in, they would ask, what is the number there for? And this might pertain to me more than it pertains to you, but he would come in and just explain simply that there are 1,440 minutes in a day. And it's a reminder to me to know that that's the number of minutes I have and to prioritize every minute that I have in my day. What would you like? Do you need something from me? So he said, as a result of that, the got a minute meeting requests decreased dramatically, and people were able to do what they were paid to do, which is to use their skills, which is what you hired them for, and to actually solve the problems and not wait for daddy to bless it and say, okay, yes, you should do that. Or for you to hold their hands and do it for them, which also goes into what Tim Ferriss says. Yes, and I know going back to that, of delegation, where he set up certain systems where, anything under a certain dollar amount, you can make that decision yourself. Or to set up guidelines, right? For his VAs, for his virtual assistants, he set up rules for them. These types of emails go here, this goes there. And I know I tried to do that also, is to allow people to take responsibility for their jobs and to pull it all together. That will make them love their jobs that much more.
Yeah, because they have skin in the game. It's like, why do you? If you go back to, if you're listening to the Small Moves podcast, going back to episode 7, where I interviewed a good buddy of mine, Arvind Budram. He had a corporate job at HBO. He was a coder and he was working for HBO, and that's a job. That's a lifetime job. That's a job where it's a big corporate, publicly traded behemoth where if you work there and keep your head down and don't try not to suffer from the tall poppy syndrome, just kind of keep your head down and do your job. That's a job where you could be that's one of the few jobs that are still around where you could be for 40 years and, retire with somewhat of a 401k and a pension and be relatively well set. But you're not allowed to stand out, or if you stand out, you get chopped down. It's amazing, and everybody hates their job. So he mentioned about how he had changed to another small tech startup that was based in Manhattan, and God forbid, he was given personal responsibility to the end product. Like, if you're a coder working for HBO and you screw something up, no one's really going to know, at least not the people that are consuming the content, the product, the final product. They're not going to know. You're anonymous. Whereas when you take this job with this startup, where if you mess up, the website's going to crash or the app is going to crash or whatever, and that's going to affect your 500,000, 1 million, 2 million, 10 million subscribers of this service. Whoa. That gives you a whole nother level of engagement with your job. And for the people that can't handle that kind of pressure, obviously that filters them out very, very quickly, but it then very quickly fills those positions with people that love to be engaged in the process. At least that's been my experience, where if you give people responsibility, and getting back to the Tim Ferriss example that you were just using, when setting those rules, he also set specific dollar limits. And that was actually something that I found interesting was, when he had a, God, what was it? It was a physical nutrition,
Right.
product business.
Brain
I think it was called Brain Quicken, I think is what it.
Yep.
Brain Quicken. This is what it was called initially. And, if a customer called up with a problem with the product, hey, it was open. Hey, I didn't get any benefit out of this or whatever. When customer service calls would come in, these virtual assistants would have to call him every single phone call, which is, hey, this person had this problem. What should I do? Hey, this person had this problem. What should I do? And after a while, one of the rules that he set up with his virtual assistants was, okay, if the problem can be solved for less than $50, don't talk to me, just fix it. And then he would reevaluate their cases once a month, once a quarter, whatever, and say, okay, this person is actually doing really, really well. I'm getting good reviews from them. That person's limit just went up to $100 or $500 or $1,000 or whatever. And then eventually the phone calls stopped because the people started taking responsibility for themselves because they were authorized to do so. And so for people that are listening, if you are a supervisor of some sort, the best advice that I could give that I've seen is, if you want your people to bring you less problems, give them the authority to solve problems themselves without significant recourse. Obviously, if someone tries to solve a problem, like if you give your facility maintenance guy authority without limit to solve the mouse problem in your facility, and he solves the mouse problem by burning down the building, obviously that's something that requires a conversation afterwards.
I think so.
but within reason, let your people do their job. No offense, they know their job better than you know it. Let your people do their job. It's amazing the results that you'll see.
Yeah, I mean, and besides for improving the quality of the job and life of the supervisor, and I could talk to that as a supervisor,
Sure.
but at the same time, they will be so much more engaged at work, and now they care. Like you said, they have skin in the game. That now they make a difference. And you're right. Those who don't like making decisions and they just like, kicking up any decision up the corporate ladder until someone has a decision that's handed down and they just implement it, then they may no longer feel comfortable on the team. And that's good that you see it now. It's good for them. It's good for you. And if they can't adjust, then they never were the greatest fit. But for most people, they'll enjoy that because now they have the opportunity to apply their skills, which you can also help them define through this process. Because if they're going to have to start making real decisions based on real problems, they're going to have to dig deep into their toolbox and try to see what other tools they have there. They may have to pull something out from the bottom and dust it off. Say, hey, I can deal with this customer through active listening and being authentic to them, being straightforward with them, saying, hey, this was a problem. Here's how we're going to fix it. As opposed to saying, well, my boss is busy. You can schedule a meeting in 3 days, and by then the lawsuits are coming in the mail.
Yeah, absolutely.
So so that can really benefit. What I was actually recently reading Pat Flynn's book called "Will It Fly?"
Will It Fly? Yeah,
which I guess you're familiar with.
I am.
Okay.
I recommend everybody that's listening to read that book. If you've ever thought about starting any sort of a business, this book will absolutely put on the brakes for a second and give you a really great model to sort of run your ideas through, just to make it sure that you're not doomed for failure from day one. But anyway, go ahead, Shmuel.
So I was actually doing the exercises, the airplane test, which basically is a method that he has, which enables us to write down with a pen and a paper the 4 most important areas of our lives and exactly where we want to see ourselves in 5 years that would make our lives just totally awesome. Now, regardless, the purpose of the test is to gain clarity and for it to be a litmus test on which to weigh any new business idea that comes, that even if the idea will be successful, if it's not going to match with your real true values, then you either won't be successful or you definitely won't enjoy the ride. But I think definitely for my listeners, I think for yours as well, that is a wonderful method of just figuring out where exactly do I want to go in my general professional and personal life. And with that, to say that in my current job or my current business, it doesn't fit with the overall picture that I want to go to, or not. And the reason why I mention this is because Tim Ferriss is definitely a very unique personality, and he's done all sorts of crazy things all over the world with his tango dancing, and he's been in some Japanese films and
kickboxing and all.
Kickboxing,
Sure.
and again, that's something that for him, those are the things that he loves to do, and he wants his passive income from his businesses to support that lifestyle, and that's wonderful. But that's what he wrote down in his airport test. I could tell I'm not going to share everything in my airport test, but none of those things are there. But I definitely know where I want to go, and I'm sure that you know where you want to go, and maybe not everyone really thinks about it. I've had this conversation. Go ahead.
So Shmuel, you don't want to be a professional Japanese horseback archer? That's not on your list?
No, it's not. I like to keep my options wide open, as those in my closer circle will know that there are a lot of crazy things that still are not ruled out. I actually posted something recently. I forget where it was. I think maybe on my Facebook page where it says a quote from a comedian, I believe. It says, the reason why grown-ups ask kids what they want to be when they grow up is because they're looking for ideas. And I absolutely love that line. I hope you got it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah.
I absolutely love that because I'm still always looking for ideas and I'm open to just about everything, but not that. But my point with this is that if we really know where we want to be, then we'll say, okay, working for HBO as a coder for the next 40 years, is that going to support everything that I want to do? Being a podcast host, does that open up opportunities that will be more in sync with the direction that I want to go to? It seems like, again, I'm taking this from a different perspective, just coming onto the professional world a little bit later than others, perhaps, that it seems like we kind of sign up to this program that we need to, we need to have a job and we need to just keep on going and pay those bills and work hard so that we have bills to pay, so we could try to get a couple of vacation days in where our boss won't be emailing us too much during those vacation days so that we can work. It's just like this vicious cycle that we need to put the brakes on and really evaluate where it is that we want to get to and then start figuring out, practical ways to get there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm totally with you there. Yeah. What I find so interesting about it too is putting down those goals, what it is that you're trying to do. That doesn't necessarily preclude the job at HBO or the corporate position that involves all the conference calls or reports or whatnot. My brain doesn't work that way. I can't fathom how those people can handle jobs like that. But there are people that actually enjoy that setting, whatever their personality type is, that permits them to actually enjoy that type of work. Or for example, if any sort of career related goals or achievements don't make your top goals list. But if your goal is to climb Mount Everest, or your goal is to whatever it might be, like whatever those things are that are on your list, sometimes I'm making this sound derogatory, but I'm not in this particular case. Like the mind numbing, keep your head down, shut up, do your job, and take your 3 weeks, in the summer job, that could actually get you to your end goal. I don't want, as we're sort of circling for a landing here with our conversation, I don't want the audience to get the wrong idea that both of us are just sitting here poo-pooing the idea of a 9-to-5 job. What we're doing is saying that you need to be true to what you actually want. If you're not the type of person that can handle a job like that, don't stay in a job like that. Find something that works for you, but you need to know what works for you. I like the point of going back to Pat Flynn's point of will it flies. Like get to write down the things that you actually care about and that you actually want to accomplish, and then put everything that you're doing through that filter. Is this helping? No, scrap it. Is this helping? Yes, keep it. Because sometimes if for example, if you're a mountain climber, I keep going back to that example because it's something that's the farthest thing in the damn world from what I am. But if you're into hardcore mountain climbing and you get a lot of practice in at like the Earth Treks or whatever the organization is that does like really great indoor mountain climbing, and you're lucky enough to have decent outdoor mountain climbing around where you live. But for you to go and do a hardcore climb at a hardcore mountain somewhere on the globe, that's not something that you can do on a weekend trip. Like that's something that's going to take 2, 3, 4 weeks, a month. If you're running your own business where you're trading your time, if you're trading your time for money in your own entrepreneurial venture, you can't just ghost for a month. You can't do that. Whereas if you do have one of these corporate jobs, if you've got 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 3 weeks plus coincidentally a paid medical leave week, whatever it is, you can do that type of stuff. So that if that's the thing that matters to you, that's okay. Just know, Shmuel's audience, my people know this about me. That is absolutely not me, but that doesn't mean that it can't be you. Just know what is you is, I think, the point of our entire conversation here.
Absolutely. And I'll add to that, because I'm fascinated by the way people choose to spend their professional careers, I've asked some of my staff and people who don't work for me, who have been staying within the corporate world and doing their 9 to 5 or whatever their hours are. And these are people who I know could be very successful opening up their own businesses. And they're also the ones who have the boots to the ground and they see where the openings are and the opportunities are for businesses. And I've asked them, why don't you come out as a consultant? You've been a clinician for 30 years. You've seen everything. You have so much value to offer, which you give to your own company that you're working for. But if you come out as a consultant, you could double your salary overnight, and you could really grow from there, tremendously. And many people, again, they're staying where they are because they do understand what they want in life, and they want to know that when they close their computer at 4:30, 5, 6, whenever it is that they leave, they're done. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if the building's on fire. It doesn't matter if healthcare disappeared. Their check is still coming every 2 weeks, and regardless of what's going on. And for those people, absolutely. And probably most people fit into that category.
Yeah.
Or many people do. And another group of people who thrive in the corporate environment, and I'm not saying this necessarily in a negative way, but I guess I have to give that introduction. There are those who thrive on all the back and forth, the things that we both described that we don't enjoy. Let's see how to say this politically correct, but put it this way, I have a family. I'm part of I'm an active member of my community, and I'm very comfortable with my self-image, regardless of what anyone in my business encounters think of me. I honestly really don't care. I don't. I mean, I guess I'm human, so to some extent I care, but that's not where I get. I guess, to be more honest, that's not where I get my definition of self. So
sure,
if I can get 20 people to do what I want them to do, and even if they don't want to do it, if that promotes the goals of the business and if that's the correct thing to do, I'll do it. But that's not where I get my kicks, I guess. So for me, that I don't need to or want to be in that role. But there are others who perhaps they get a big definition of self from the workplace, which is not necessarily a bad thing. That could be a great thing. And they are the people who want to be even on that higher level in the corporate world. And there are so many people like that. And for them, it's very good.
Yeah.
The point is just, I think we're on the same page with this, is for each one of us to figure out where do we fit. And obviously we're oversimplifying this, and it takes some thought, and it takes, days, months, years of reflection, but just to be conscious of the fact we don't have to stay wherever we ended up if we just ended up there. We should and consciously choose where we want to end up, and then start making the tweaks and the adjustments in a sensible, responsible way to get to where we want to end up.
Hear, hear.
Yeah, I'm sorry for that monologue.
No, absolutely. So Shmuel, like I said, I think that's a pretty solid place for both of us to wrap up. I wanted to ask you, there's one question that I ask all the guests of the Small Moves podcast. I'm not sure if there's anything that you do similar, but one question that I like to ask everybody, kind of getting back to the concept of my show being sort of radical incrementalism, like what are the small incremental things that could eventually end up making a significant difference in one's life, regardless of the area of life. Your answer to this question can be limited to your professional career, or it could be it's wide open. This can apply to anything. What purchase have you made in recent memory of $100 or less that's had the most impact on your life? Like, is there something that you can think of that's made a significant impact on your life with a price point of at or less than $100?
Well, first off, I love the question because the purchase completely threw me off. I had a completely different answer through that, because I know there are other shows who ask, what is the one thing, that they can implement? And this I ask my audience, what is the one practice or a small change? What's the one small actionable step that everyone listening can take to make a real to make a real change in your life? But you're saying something different, an actual purchase that I've made, $100 or less.
And it can be just caveat, it can be a subscription like thing where the total price point is less than that, but there's some flexibility. It's like as it pertains to this question, you are my guest. Feel free to say whatever the hell you want, but I try to keep it roughly in that $100 mark.
No, I got that. If we go into the world of books, I can say that I think there are so many. I mean, I am a little bit of a junkie when it comes to this. Probably if I thought a little bit longer, I would come up with a different answer. But what I think, something that I mentioned Kevin Kruse earlier and his book, the 15 Secrets That Successful People Know About Time Management. I was actually, I guess, fired from one of my previous positions due to my mismanagement of emails. And there were 150, 200 emails coming in every single day. And I was just starting from the top, doing as much as I could. And there were serious stuff that, did not get dealt with. And it wasn't just that, but a lot of it had to do with time management. I actually came back. I'm going to answer your question, but I actually came back and I had like a conference call with the owners who are kind of friends of mine and my direct report, and explained to them why I thought that decision was wrong. And ultimately I did get my job back, but I was on a very, very short leash to show them that things are going to be different. And at that point, especially with my family responsibilities, I don't have I can't be picky. I just need to make sure that the checks are coming in. So there were a couple of things that I did to improve it, but the most significant one was the purchase of that book. And the most particular tool that I pulled out of that book was what he calls his MIT, his most important task, which means that every single day, I try to do this every single day before I go into work, I actually write down on a small index card, what are the absolutely most important things that must be done today? And if I do these and nothing else, my day was successful. And if I don't do these, my day was not successful. And these are things which are not necessarily things that take a long time, but these are things which are very high in importance in regards to the overall mission and goal of the organization, which I guess in my role as, the administrator of the healthcare facility, that's my responsibility. And then when I do get to work and start my day, those are the things that I, block off everything, close my door, find a quiet place and get those things done first and out of the way right away before I deal with everything else that I do. And just that one tip alone has really tremendously helped me improve my general workflow to the point that I'm actually now working with others, and I've done this in the past, that I've shared this method with others to help them be more productive and more focused in their day, and it has helped them out tremendously. So I don't know if that's exactly what you were looking for, but that really, really helps me out every single day.
No, that's exactly what I was getting after. Sure.
What about you? Let me get right back at you. If there was one particular hack, trick, tweak that our listeners can apply directly, immediately in order to either to help them define what their unique skills are, or more importantly, how to find a way to apply them into their current work environment or their personal environment. Is there any one particular thing that you've done in the past that has been successful for you that you think that it would be beneficial to share with the listeners of my show and your show?
Morning pages.
All right.
Are you familiar with morning pages?
No.
It's marketed towards artists, but it's a journal. Journaling, frankly, is the thing that has helped me, but a very specific type of journaling. As I'm sure you know, as a fellow follower of Tim Ferriss, he's a huge advocate of keeping a journal because it just kind of helps to sort of tame our monkey mind. But with me being a pretty extreme ADHD case, squirrel. Anyway, with me being a relatively extreme ADHD case, my brain is moving 1,000 miles an hour all the time. I generally don't have much trouble settling down at night, but during the day and especially in the mornings, just my brain is exploding. I don't know what to do. I don't know where to do it. I don't know how to start. And funny, a combination of two purchases totaling under $100 has actually helped me a ton. One of them was my first copy of Morning Pages, which if you go to Amazon right now and just type in Morning Pages, it'll come up. It's a journal, and it's a process of journaling where you take a pen and you write freehand brain dump for 3 pages per day. Now, if you write big, obviously this will go relatively quickly. If your journal looks like you're a psychopath and you write really small, then really big, and then sideways and upside down, you might give the wrong impression to your family. But the point of it is you want to just write what's on your brain, no matter what it is, for 3 pages every day. And it just cuts down on the noise so much, and it takes 5 minutes or less. Like this isn't something that takes a lot of time, because there's a lot of journals. I've experimented with a couple of different types of journaling out there, just because I hear from every direction, you've got to journal, you got to keep a journal, all your best ideas come out in your journal, blah 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 blah. I've tried so many different styles of journaling, and Morning Pages has been the easiest one for me because I don't have to think about what I write down. Like a lot of the journals that are out there, you want to answer certain questions. List 3 things that made you feel very fortunate today. List the 3 things that went great. List the 3 things that went bad. Remind yourself to tell your spouse that you love them. I'm like, if I need a book to remind me to tell my wife that I love her, we have problems. We have bigger problems in our marriage. It's like, I tell my wife that 50 times a day. I don't need a book to tell me that. The morning pages, there is no structure. The structure is think out loud onto the page for 5 minutes. That's it. Awesome. That's it.
I've started doing this. I'm such a computer tech type of person, and I use all the apps to record everything. Even just random thoughts in the car, or writing things down, taking pictures of everything. My staff know, if it could be emailed, do not give me a paper because I'm just going to lose it. Especially, I'm always walking throughout the building, and I pick it up one place, I drop it somewhere else, and everything goes missing. Sure. But having said all that, I did start recently just writing things down. And like you said, like a brain dump. And especially when I'm overwhelmed and I'm not sure where to go in a certain way, just put everything down on paper. Mm-hmm. Even if I never ever read it again, just the process of writing it. And I've tried it with typing, and it's completely different.
It's different. Yep.
It's completely different. And I know there are studies on this that show that it's different. And I hate my handwriting. And I'm not going to show you what it looks like, but what I do know, and the truth is, I how many people still write when everybody types everything, and for communication, emails are much more efficient. But by the act of writing down on a piece of paper, and just like you said, a brain dump of everything, it just clears up the mind. And even if you don't refer back to it, and I did start referring back to it as well, which is another added benefit.
Well, I have to say, and just a closing point on that is, I like how you point out, it's like email is a lot more efficient and typing is a lot more efficient. And yes, that's true. But let's not forget that some of the best ideas in the world come out of inefficiency.
True. True. I forget which CEO it is. We could look it up afterwards. Who said? I think the founder of the Virgin Company said that his most valuable asset that he has with him at all times is a small notebook. He says so many of the multi-million or dollar ideas and companies that he created were all a result of the notepad that was with him, and that anytime something came up, he wrote it down. Now I do the same thing with Evernote and things like that. It's different.
It's not the same. I know.
Same, and I hate to admit that, because this would be she is right again moment. But I do hate to admit it, but there definitely is a place for paper in our forever increasing technical and digital world. But really, just to wrap this up, if you don't mind sharing with my listeners, and I'll do the same with your listeners, where's the best way for them to follow everything that you're doing, Jason, and your website, and give it to us?
Sure. My website, my web address for the podcast is smallmoves.co, not .com, .co.
Okay.
And on the socials, you can follow me on Facebook at JC Herzberger, or you can follow me on Twitter at simply twitter.com/Jason Herzberger. Those are the best places to find me and to follow me. That's probably the best way to find me.
Excellent. And I'll put links to those in my show notes.
That'd be great. How about you?
Yeah. And for me, the best way to find me really is shmuelseptimus.com /podcast. That's where the podcast is found. You can find it in iTunes as well, the Love Your 9 to 5 show.
Yep.
And you can also follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's all at shmuelseptimus. And we can put links to that as well. I can send that to you. And that's where you can find basically everything that is going on.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. So everybody that's listening, thanks a lot for bearing with us in this experimental format. I know this episode ran a little bit longer than Shmuel's audience usually goes. So I do appreciate you bearing with us if you're still indeed with us. And so that being said, on my end, I appreciate you and thank you for listening. And I will talk to you all next time around.
Okay. And Jason, I'll second that. This really has been a pleasure. This was experimental and actually was a lot of fun. And I'm excited to hear feedback from both my listeners and your listeners to see if this is a format which was beneficial and to see if it's something maybe to do in the future. But this really was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for your time, Jason.
Yes, sir. Take it easy.
I just want to thank you for sticking it out to the end. Please let me know in our Facebook group if you like this format and you like the way we did this episode. I would really appreciate to hear that feedback, and that would be so helpful to shaping the way we do all of our episodes. If you have not already joined the Facebook group, simply go over to facebook.com and put the words Love Your 9 to 5 in the search box, and you will see our group come up. And just click join, and we'll be sure to add you to the group, and so you can join the conversation. You could also send me a direct message on Facebook, or as always, you can send me an email, and that's shmuel@shmuelseptimus.com, shmuel@shmuelseptimus.com. Looking forward to being with you in our next episode.